Buenos días.
Buenos días, Rodolfo. Gusto saludarlo.
Buenos días.
Lo voy a hacer co-host o para que usted pueda, pero no sé si se puede compartir bien, ¿ok?
Sí, déjame hacer una pequeña prueba de la presentación. ¿Está bien?
Voy a hacerlo co-host ahora para que usted pueda, para que chequemos si usted puede presentar.
Sí, porque aquí dice que por lo pronto no puedo yo.
Patricio, ¿sabes si tengo que dejarlo co-host o host? Lo voy a dejar host. Co-host. Ya, ahora debería poder.
¿Pato? ¿Hola?
Hola, buenos días.
¿Pato? ¿Me escuchas?
Sí, yo te escucho.
Es la Cata.
Sí, sí.
Hola,
Hola,
Cata.
Cata. ¿Qué tal?
¿Quién habló antes? ¿La Dani?
Sí, aquí
Sí,
estoy.
La Dani,
habla
a la Dani la escucho muy bien, pero Pato, a ti te escucho muy lejos, para que no nos pase lo que nos pasó el otro día con la traducción.
Ya, a ver, espérate.
No, te escucho ultra tumba. Yo no sé si está en otro canal o qué, pero muy lejos. Y Dani,
Rodolfo,
a
se
ver,
me
Dani,
perfecta
habla
la
tú.
presentación. Hola, buenos
Sí,
días.
no, la Dani perfecto, pero Pato muy lejos.
Patricio, tengo que agregar tu mail, ¿cierto? Para la interpretación.
Aquí en la cuenta de Zoom no es necesario, pero sí tienes que seleccionarme como
Sí.
usuario. Claro.
Sigo
Pero espérate, antes
escuchando
de
a Pato
activar la
muy
interpretación.
lejos.
Yo lo
Sí,
escucho súper bien.
Sí,
Yo, Patricio, lo escucho súper bien.
Sí,
Eh,
estoy al...
Rodolfo, su presentación se ve perfecta.
Me tengo que ir.
Ya. Sí. Pato.
Sí, ¿me
Sí,
escuchan?
yo soy Carolina Urmeneta, soy la que va a estar moderando. Y ahí viene llegando también la alcaldesa, que es a la que tú vas a traducir. ¿Ya? La cosa es que no te escuchamos, Pato. ¿Puedes hablar más cerca?
Algo es extraño ahí porque estoy a tope en volumen, tengo un audífono.
¿Cómo está ahí?
Sí,
Bien.
no, voy a entrar y salir de Zoom porque
Yo te
no
voy a hacer
hay
la
más
pregunta en
que
inglés.
puedo hacer
Ya, no,
que
sí,
eso.
perfecto. Tú hablas
Dame un
ahí 2
segundo,
líneas y estamos probando la
Ya.
traducción. Y el gallo te va a
dame un
traducir
segundo, voy a entrar y
2, 3
salir de
líneas y él
Zoom,
te
pero
traduce. Él
eso es.
tiene tu
Voy
teléfono,
a,
pero para cambiar
yo voy a
señal
quitar la
tiene que
presentación, ¿está
exacto.
bien?
¿Cachai?
Ok.
¿Te parece? Perfecto.
Quítela, Rodolfo, por favor.
¿Aló?
Pero ahora se ve. Ahora se ve la presentación.
Se ve bien, ¿verdad?
O sea, se
Pero
está pasando la.
yo no me veo. Eso es
Nosotros
lo
te
que
vemos, Rodolfo, no te preocupes.
Necesito que probemos si la presentación usted la puede hacer correcta, que ahora solo vemos
Ah,
el- la primera parte, la primera página.
sí,
Ahí está. A ver, está cargando, ahí está. Sale una boya,
pero
sí, está perfecto.
esa es una segunda lámina, pero me voy a ir para atrás. Perdone,
No, no hay problema.
estoy haciendo la prueba.
Prueba nomás.
Ok, probando aquí, voz de Patricio.
Ahí
¿Qué
está
tal
mucho
ahí?
mejor, Patricio. Un poquito más fuerte y
Ya,
estamos
bacán.
perfectos. Dale, a ver. Patricio, eso. ¿Podéis
Eh,
probar?
sí, no, es que me río porque estoy a tope en todo. Estoy a
Ah,
tope en volumen, está el micrófono al lado de mi
Pero yo te
boca, no.
escucho mejor.
sí, mucho mejor.
La Dani,
Yo te escucho
sí,
mucho mejor.
ok, bacán.
Eh, Rodolfo, le voy a quitar un poco el hosting de la actividad para poder poner
Pero Rodolfo tiene que
Patricio
poner
como
su
intérprete.
presentación después de la embajadora, Dani.
Claro, dame un segundo que tengo que hacer darle permiso al intérprete.
Dale.
Ya, ya. Eh,
Stop sharing. Es que, bueno, es que ustedes ahí me ven. Bueno, voy a apagar mi de esto.
Ahí está con su cámara apagada.
Ahora ya no te vemos, Rodolfo.
Ok, perfecto.
Pero la idea es que yo voy a poner, antes de partir, el flyer, y cuando partamos y los presente, te voy a poner a ti también en la cámara y vamos a estar todos acá. Y luego de eso vas a estar tú como con la cámara encendida, idealmente mientras habla la embajadora. Luego termina la embajadora, tú pones tu presentación y nosotros la vemos. Y te vemos a ti.
Ah, ok.
¿Te
Muy
parece?
bien.
Ya.
Ya. Rodolfo, ahora le voy a quitar un segundo el co-hosting para poder agregar a Patricio como intérprete, ¿ok? ¿Aló?
¿Ah?
Yo te escucho perfecto, ¿eh?
Sí, te
Ya, voy
escuchamos.
a... Dame un segundo. Ya, entonces... Listo, Patricio. Ahora, Rodolfo, lo voy a volver a hacer con host. ¿Estás ok, Patricio? ¿Patricio? 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 ¿Aló, Patricio? ¿Patricio? ¿Patricio? Ahí estás, te escucho, te escucho, te escucho. Sí, aquí te escucho. ¿Me escuchas? Sí, está bien, está bien. Ya, entonces, ¿cómo lo hago? Ya, ahí sí. ¿Aló, Patricio? ¿Patricio? 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 Ah, ¿Patricio?
Ya, ahora sí, ¿me escuchas, Dani?
Sí, te escucho perfecto.
Sí, lo que pasó es que tú apagaste el escuchar interpretación de tu cuenta.
Ah,
Por eso
pero
yo seguía como intérprete. Ahora está apagada la interpretación.
tú la
Ya,
pagaste.
yo la apagué. Sí,
Ya,
sí,
ahora
sí,
tú
sí,
la vas a
sí.
volver a poner, ¿cierto? Cuando tú seas host. ¿Te puedes poner tú mismo?
Yo me voy a poner como intérprete. Te voy a hacer co-host a ti y voy a hacer
A Rodolfo.
co-host a Rodolfo, que ya lo es. Y con eso quedamos listos, pero yo necesito el host para poner y sacar la interpretación rápido, porque en este momento la única forma que me escuchen de la COP, como ellos lo tienen configurado, es que yo no esté como intérprete y ellos necesitan escucharme para la primera parte, para la interpretación de la alcaldesa, ¿vale?
Patricio, yo lo único que necesito es que tú haz lo que tú quieras. Tú estás de host, yo voy a quedar aquí todo el rato. Yo no, lo único, yo no te voy a poner de intérprete, ¿cierto? Tú te vas a poner de intérprete.
Correcto, sí,
Ya, ok. Igual me voy
súper,
a quedar acá. Ya,
ok.
voy a apagar mi
Ok.
micrófono.
Sí, yo también, vuelvo en 2 minutos.
Ya. Rodolfo, ¿todo ok? Rodolfo,
Aquí estoy, aquí estoy.
Ah, perfecto, ya, estamos todos ok. Ya, entonces usted habla después de la embajadora, yo voy a estar aquí con el micrófono apagado. Cualquier cosa me puede escribir al WhatsApp, ¿ya?
Carolina, ¿qué tal? ¿Me escuchas? Probando, probando, Carolina. Llamando. Carolina.
Ahora sí, ¿me escuchas?
Sí, sí, te escucho súper. Oye,
Dime.
dinámica para la interpretación de la alcaldesa, lo que sería ideal es que ella hable unas frases,
Sí,
un
ella ya
minuto.
sabe. Como va a hablar 2 o 3
Ya,
líneas y te dejamos hablar a ti, 2 o 3 líneas y te dejamos hablar a ti.
sí, yo lo haría incluso más largo. Yo
Ah,
lo haría
perfecto.
como un minuto de speech,
¿Ya?
pausa y después yo interpreto un minuto de speech
Más
para que sea
dinámico.
más fluido. ¿Ya?
Perfecto.
Y
Ya.
que una cosa, te enojo con la Patty ahí, que cuando empieza a alargarse, ella se preocupa, ya, pero que no se preocupe porque yo no pierdo, no importa lo que dure el mensaje, puede durar 3 horas, ¿cachai? Pero yo no pierdo nada. Lo que pasa es que tienen que tener la paciencia de que fluya, ¿cachai?
Ya.
Un minuto y después yo interpreto otro. Ok, bacán. Eso
Perfecto.
es, muchas gracias. Ya,
Buenísimo.
súper,
Vamos a
buenísimo.
partir, Rodolfo y Orión, 2 minutos para dar tiempo a la gente que está llegando y para que puedas prender tu cámara, Rodolfo, ¿te parece?
Sí, sí, sí.
Buenísimo.
No hay ningún problema. En 2 minutos tú dime.
O cuando quieras, puede ser ahora, no hay ningún problema.
Ok, bueno, me estoy tomando un cafecito.
Ah, no, dale, dale, no hay problema. So we are
No hay
going to
ningún, no hay
start
ningún problema.
in 3 minutes. And we're going to try this. Oh, here. These are not working. No, we're not going to use this. Or yes? No, it is because Catalina said to me that it's better to use only one. Is that okay? Yeah. Ay, gracias por venir. Qué bueno relaje de la alcaldesa.
¿Cómo te cuento?
Ya, buena. Oye,
Mucho. Sí.
this is better? Oh, okay, great. Okay, we're going to give it 2 minutes because we need another panelist. And then, yes, we're waiting the mayor of Dakar, maybe. He's coming, but I don't know. Yes, I'm going to say, yeah, yes, of course. If you want, yeah.
Start now?
So, considering the time, I think we're going to start. Ambassador, if you want to come here, it would be great. So we don't have.
Let's
Probably.
go.
Yeah, let's go. So, welcome everyone. We're going to start this incredible event. If you want to sit, Ambassador, that's okay. We're going to talk about, we are today in Solution Day at COP27, no? And what we're going to talk about today, it is about waste diversion and segregation, because we're talking here of a huge opportunity on methane mitigation and also a huge talent on policy, no? And why are we talking about this? Of course, you know, we have the global methane pledge, and we are talking here on methane mitigation reduction. The waste sector is responsible of the 20% of the global methane emission. And what we need is to support different actors in order to go for implementation. And we need fast implementation. So that is what we are going to talk about. And we have great speakers today and also great panelists. We have Catherine Stewart. She is the ambassador for climate change in Canada. We have online Rodolfo Lacey, who is the Director for Climate Action and Environment for Latin America at the OECD. And then we are going to talk and to discuss with great panelists. We're going to talk with Lisa Moon, the CEO at the Global Food Banking Network, with Christy Keith, the Executive Director at Gaia, with Alison Bender, the Executive Director at CCAP, and with our dear Carolina Leitao, the President of the Municipality Association in Chile. So let's start with this, and I welcome the Ambassador of Climate Change in Canada, Catherine Stewart. We are going to have great announcements today, and we hope to have more announcements during the Global Methane Pledge Ministerial. And just to say, you know, my name is Carolina Urmeneta. I'm the Global Hub. I am with the Global Methane Hub, and I am the Program Director for Circular Economy and Waste. The Global Methane Hub is a philanthropic effort to align funds on methane mitigation. We focus on 3 areas: energy, agriculture, and waste, and we support signatories and not signatories of the Global Methane Pledge in meeting the pledge and go beyond that. And for that, what we do is that we drive coordination and collaboration between different institutions, different actors, and also between governments. And that is exactly what we're going to talk about and to hear about the different speakers and panelists we have. So, Catherine, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Carolina. It's really nice to be here, and I appreciate the invitation to be here. And hello to all the people online, including Rodolfo Lassi. Nice to be able to partner with you here today. So Canada joined over 100 countries at the last COP in joining the Global Methane Pledge, which was co-led by the US and the EU, with the commitment to reduce methane emissions by 30% by 2030. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what Canada's doing in terms of methane reduction. We introduced a new methane strategy in September called Faster and Further, and it really provides a pathway to reduce emissions in 3 main sectors: the oil and gas sector, landfill and agriculture sector, which represents 95% of our methane emissions in Canada. And our commitment is to reduce methane emissions by 35% by 2030, so above the Global Methane Pledge. And we've actually made a lot of progress already in the oil and gas sector in Canada. Based on a review done last year, we've already reduced our oil and gas methane emissions by 40%. And we have a commitment to 75% reduction by 2030. So we're really pushing hard on methane in that sector. But specific to the waste sector, it represents 28% of our methane emissions in Canada. And 87% of those come from municipalities and municipal solid waste. So what we're doing is to putting in place regulations to increase the number of landfills that are available to collect and treat methane, but also for those centers that are already out there, we want to make sure we can improve on them so that they can collect all they can. And with that, we hope to be able to reduce methane emissions in the waste sector by 50% by 2030. We do have aspirational goals working with our different levels of government, our provincial and territorial governments, and that is 30% by 2030 and 50% by 2040. So lots of ambition there, lots of planning, lots of work already underway, and lots of results domestically. In terms of international, you're absolutely right. We have a lot of work to do globally to help drive the reduction in methane emissions. And my minister, Minister Stephen Guilbeault, today will be announcing new funding to support methane emissions in the waste sector in 4 Caribbean small island developing states, namely Belize, Grenada, St. Lucia, and Guyana. These 4 countries are also signatories to the Global Methane Pledge with stated priorities in the waste management sector. What this program will do is replicate really important work that we've done with Chile in the Reciclos Orgánicos program, and that was led by the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Canada under our previous commitment of climate funding of $2.65 billion. And that really created significant waste management co-benefits, brought in the private sector, lots of benefits as well to the health, biodiversity, tourism, standard of living all around. So this program will be administered by the Center for Clean Air Policy, and we're pleased to be delivering it in partnership with the Global Methane Hub, who's currently supporting the extension of Reciclos Orgánicos in 6 countries in Latin America and Caribbean region. So the program will be country-driven and designed with the 4 participating countries. It will also include South-South cooperation element to facilitate exchange and dialogue between all 10 countries for sharing learned and best practices. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today and talk about this exciting new work that Canada is going to be doing internationally. Thank you.
Thank Ambassador, and I think we need to give an applause because we are so happy to have 10 countries, joining now today with this partnership. So thank you to Canada. Now we have 10 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean working on this program. We had really great experience working with you. the Global Methane Hub is based in Chile, and I am Chilean, you know. So I totally understand the good news that we are going to talk and we have with this program implementation. Alison and Carolina Litao are going to talk about that, you know, about great experience on implementation action on organic waste. And I think that is so good. And what I also think it's so important, Ambassador, that you said to us, is that we need to drive collaboration at South-South level. You know? That is really relevant because we understand each other and we understand our reality also. And that is different on what we have at the global north, you know, which is great. We need to go there, but we need to talk about what is going on in the territories to know how to implement actions. And we're talking about implementation. We are talking about have concrete actions, but for that, we also need policies. And we need ambitious policies, but we need to understand data, and we need to understand, again, the reality of each country and of each municipality, you know, and territory. And for that, we have here Rodolfo Lacey. Rodolfo?
Hola, hi Carolina.
Great.
How are you?
Fine.
Good
Everything.
morning, everyone.
Everything, it's perfect. So if you could share your presentation with us, it would be great.
Yes, I will.
Rodolfo is going to talk about an analysis of methane control policies from organic fraction of municipal solid waste. So happy to hear you, Rodolfo. The floor is now yours.
Okay, can you hear me? Well, you can see the presentation here. So
You could,
let me
Rodolfo?
start.
Yeah, could
Yes.
you like speak louder?
Yes, of course. Can you hear me better?
Not that much. Wait a minute.
No? Oh my God.
There.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
There it is.
Perfect.
Perfect, yeah.
Okay, so let's start. Well, thank you very much, Carolina, for your kind introduction, and thank you, everyone, very much for coming to this event. We are living, of course, in trying times. The effects of the climate crisis can be seen everywhere, from deadly heat waves in France to droughts, of course, in the sub-Saharan Africa and in many of our countries. In events like the COP27 in this occasion, beyond official negotiations, we have the chance to come together, share ideas, and shedding a light to certain aspects of this planetary crisis we are facing. In this presentation, we would like to bring attention to a particular problem that of methane emissions from the organic fraction of waste, and the potential solution to curb it, from reducing the volume of food waste overall to deploy technologies to enhance municipal waste and wastewater management systems. Let's start with the next slide. Let me put the full elements of the slide. So you are seeing here that we have a problem, no? With the atmospheric concentrations of methane. Over the past 3 decades, methane have dramatically increased, increasing at an annual growth rate that you see previous the Paris Agreement. We had 4.4 parts per billion per year between the time of the Rio de Janeiro summit, and now we are growing our methane emissions faster, even after the Paris Agreement. So this is not a good, of course, news, and this is a massive challenge that we have to face, as we are facing also other problems of emissions in different greenhouse gases and short-lived climate pollutants. Let me now go directly to the problem, because decarbonizing is key to meeting our long-term goals, yes. However, fast decarbonization is not the most effective way of reducing near-term global warming. For once, decarbonizing the entire economy is a massive undertaking, one that must be done over the course of the next 3 decades to reach net zero by 2050. You know that. There are economic, political, and social challenges in decarbonizing in a shorter time frame. Reducing methane emissions today can have a significant effect in slowing down global warming, avoid more tipping points, while our economy decarbonizes ahead of 2050. Anaerobic decomposition of organic matter under shallow water in wetlands account for the biggest single source of methane emissions in the world. You can see here in the slide where are the sources of methane emissions. However, this figure bleaks in comparison to the combined methane emissions from all human activities. According to the IEA, the International Energy Agency, that is part of the OECD family, they have a methane tracker. Anthropogenic methane emissions account for approximately 60% of methane emitted to the atmosphere. The biggest source of anthropogenic methane is agriculture, followed, of course, by energy, mainly the burning of fossil fuels, with coal, oil, and gas taking up roughly 30-35% of energy emissions each. Waste account for around 20% of anthropogenic methane emissions. These emissions are generated by the decomposition of food loss, food waste, and other organic matter via anaerobic decomposition. While having access to oxygen, of course, the decomposition process generates mainly carbon dioxide and very little methane. However, when there is no oxygen present, decomposition of organic matter generates biogas, a mixture of gases consisting mainly of methane and small parts of carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide, and sometimes nitrous oxide. Organic matter decomposition does not only take place in solid state, we have to take that in account, but also in water. Wastewater carries a high concentration of organic matter in it, and if not processed properly, it will generate methane as the organic matter within it decomposes in an anaerobic fashion. 40% of methane emissions from waste come from wastewater, with the other 60% coming from solid waste, as I was explaining, from the organic fraction of the municipal waste. In terms of agriculture, there must be a focus on reducing the rate of methane intensity of agricultural goods, such as meat, dairy, and rice, whose production emits high amounts of methane, as well as promoting the entire shifts towards more sustainable plant-based choices, and lastly, reducing food waste to avoid unnecessarily producing food that will not be consumed. We are facing also this behavioral problem. This is a complex diagram, but in fact it's quite simplistic. But methane reduction and control processes are depicted in this diagram to show the different flows and known options to manage the organic fraction of the municipal waste. Everything starts center left with food production, sorry. So food production is included here in this diagram. Due to the life cycle approach we should apply to establish circular economy policies to control all methane emissions related with food loss and waste. Let me go to the next two slides. Let me try to go quickly because are complex slides. But the first part of this diagram shows food loss and food waste that these processes can generate methane in any point of the food chain, in production, processing, distribution, at the consumer level, or in restaurants. The collection of all solid food loss and waste together with other organic solid waste is referred as the organic fraction of municipal solid waste. And this waste is taken to certain facilities, and from there it can follow multiple paths, as you can see in these diagrams. Of course, one possible path is for it to be incinerated or dried and turned into pellets for an electric generator to use as fuel. The most common path for organic waste to take is to end up in a landfill. Dumps or uncovered landfills generate a large amount of methane. You know that. A lot of interest has been generated recently in composting because it is feasible to reduce the amount of methane emitted, but also we can produce fertilizers or soil improvers. Lastly, solid waste may be taken to a biodigester, generating biogas, because in all these processes, engineers, like environmental engineers like me, are trying, of course, to speed up the methane production to have a new renewable source of energy and close the circularity of many of the products that we are handling every day. So let me now move to the second part of the explanation of this diagram that is related with wastewater, because producers, processors, retailers, households, and restaurants all input organic matter into the sewage, as well as food waste through carburetors in kitchen sinks. It's very common to do that in developed countries. So often sewage allow methane to escape into the atmosphere. If sewage contents carrying high levels of organic matter are dumped into water bodies without treatment, a very common practice, you know that, rivers, lakes, and lagoons become methane emitters, and we have to avoid that. Of course, alternatively, sewage can be taken to a wastewater treatment plant with a portion of pollutants and organic matter being removed and stabilized, so it is safer to dispose in water bodies. Byproduct of these treatment plants is sludge with high concentrations of stabilized organic matter. This sludge can then be taken to biodigesters to accelerate the decomposition of organic matter and production of methane. There is a remaining sludge from the biodigesters that can be either dumped or taken to a plant to produce fertilizers and complete the circularity of the diagram. Well, you know that the SDGs are guiding many of the policy action in the environment domain. And SDG 11 is quite important because we have this goal of creating or transforming our cities in sustainable cities and communities. And in this particular goal, there are some indicators, but this one, the material recovery rate of municipal waste, is quite important. And the OECD is tracking all SDGs and all indicators. And for this specifically, we have set 50% of material recovery as the benchmark because are the best practices in OECD countries. But only 16, as you reading, of course, only 16 OECD countries are close to this target. And this is the challenge that we are facing worldwide. We are not recycling at all. There are some numbers of how our economies are in this phase of circular economies, and is 10% or less than 10%. So we are promoting this inverse pyramid or reverse pyramid with preferred approaches at the top in green, with smaller and smaller volumes of the materials ending up in each tier going down. And the preferred approach is to prevent materials from becoming waste, reduce the volume of waste generation, and the amount of hazardous or difficult to process materials in products. Preventing food waste and organic waste generation can be done through various means, though success has been found in raising public awareness, education, and the use of economic tools to incentivize behavioral change. No? So incentives and government regulations are helping on this, but we have to do a lot on education and also in communications of this problem. If prevention fails, the reusing of a product is the second preferred outcome. Reusing organic goods or food waste is hard. It's very hard and not as applicable to the topic as it is to other topics of circular economy. However, households and restaurants can avoid organic waste by giving use to products that otherwise would have been a waste, such as using vegetable scraps to make soup stock or the feeding of cattle with agricultural waste that would have otherwise ended up and needing to go into a waste management system. One of the main differences between the reusing and recycling approach is the degree of processing needed to give us to the product. If the product can be reused without major alterations or without being taken apart for scraps or raw materials, it is said to be reusable. If in order to make use of a product, it needs to be taken down to scraps or be heavily processed, then it is said to be recyclable. Recycling organic waste can be done in many ways. If it comes in a liquid form, through wastewater treatment plants, for example, it is solid through composting, for example, also. No? So that is the meaning of this specific diagram. But a sustainable approach to waste management through composting and recycling is becoming increasingly popular across the OECD countries. Northern and Western European countries have small fractions of their waste ending in landfills, with high levels of composting, recycling, and incineration with energy recovery. Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, and countries outside of Europe have higher rates of landfill usage, which is a significant challenge that needs to be addressed. We should minimize the blue color in this table. As you can see, there are countries that are that have more landfill than recycling, and greening the table is perhaps the best option for our countries. Let me move now to a diagram that I took from the US EPA, because similar to the OECD waste hierarchy, the EPA food recovery pyramid shows what is the most preferred to least preferred approaches to making the food chain to follow the principles of a circular economy. The most important step to take is to reduce food waste at the source, taking steps to affect consumer and business behavior to minimize the volume of food loss and waste being produced. Food scraps and surplus food that cannot be consumed by humans could also be directed to feed animals. You perhaps know that many waste from restaurants are ended that way. And food waste can also be used for industrial uses. The last resort is for food waste to go to landfills for disposal. In my opinion, is a waste of the waste. So there are some good examples. We selected these two to put here in this slide. Let me tell you that Italy and France have been early adopters of legal and economic measures to curb down volumes of food waste and food loss. In 2015, the French government passed a law severely restricting the ability of supermarkets to throw away food. This has sparked a sustainable food revolution, indeed. With now certain grocery stores having areas where they sell imperfect foods and veggies at a discount, and growing the volume of food donated to charity. Regulations do not need to be a command and control approach. They also can be done using the market and incentives, as in the example of the city of Milan in Italy, that they pass a bill reducing the tax burden for businesses donating excess food to charity and instead of wasting it. This has generated, as you can read in the slide, 1.8 million euros, and there are thousands of businesses participating. In these next slides, I will show you the policy recommendations that we are suggesting in different areas. First, policies to reduce and control methane emissions from food loss and waste, or from the organic fraction of municipal solid wastewater, require a circular economy approach. This is something that we have to mainstream. Policies must be aligned, of course, with all SDGs, but we have to take into account the metrics of short-lived climate forces. Methane is one of them, and this is important because we have to give more priority to methane control in the short run. Countries should improve, of course, data collection in the waste management domain, specifically monitoring and estimating greenhouse gases. With a life cycle approach, because at the moment we do not have standards in each steps of the processes, and waste and wastewater methane emissions standards should be adopted quickly in municipalities at local, state, and national levels. This is quite important. The education communication campaigns that we are suggesting, it's also relevant, specifically for increase the notion of this problem in the society. And we have to apply, yes, economic instruments in such actors, in those actors that need to implement different technologies to manage the food products that can produce methane. and partnerships and good communications between public sector institutions, private sectors, and the public must be promoted to create opportunities as we are, of course, enhancing our policies. We have to involve the society, the whole society, in good management practices. So there are specific opportunities in this methane domain in the near future. We need to improve as data collection, as I was saying, of organic waste from countries and surveys to input environmental information systems and fiscal, economic, and financial policy frameworks and instruments. We need that. We also, let me click here. We need policies that are aligned with the circular economy principles. We have to evaluate the performance of our programs, plans locally, nationally. We need also to look at the extended producer responsibility schemes that are on place, and we have to evaluate our legal frameworks to address food loss and food waste. The inclusion of indicators in all the metrics and the management of our municipal systems are also very important, not only for the public sector, but for the private sector indeed. So, thank you very much for your attention. I know that it was a longer presentation, but with this, I think that we can discuss in the panel many other dimensions of this problem. Thank you, Carolina.
Thank you,
now stop
Rodolfo.
sharing the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Rodolfo. It was great because it gives us good information to the panel discussion. And what we think it's important is that we in the Global South hear, you know, OECD recommendation, and we go to implement them. So what we need is that, as you said, we need recycle gain importance in our policies. And for that, we need good recommendations, and we need things like this, you know, saying to the government that we need to go to this food waste hierarchy, you know, going for reduction, reutilization, recycling, etc., in order to have better results. So now I'm happy to welcome Lisa Moon, the CEO of the Global Food Banking Network. Please come in with us. Christy Keith also, Alison Bender, the Mayor Carolina Leitao, and I think we have here also Nog Diop, because I don't know, no? Okay, because the Barthélemy Diaz, the mayor of Dakar, was sick today, so sorry. And I don't know if we have a representative here, maybe no. So we're going to start with this fantastic panel, all women, so that's great. And we are going to talk about implementation, you know, and about implementation, concrete actions. I think we're having a party also, you know, so that's good, you know. We are at COP, we are at Solution Day. We need energy also, you know, to talk about this. Hope you listen also this great panel. And Lisa, considering your expertise, could you explain to us how food banks play a critical role not only in improving food security, but also in making food systems more sustainable by reducing food loss and waste? And I hope someone could help us with that music, you know, I don't know.
Thanks so much, Carolina. And like I said, I really love the energy. I feel like of this session, we should embrace it at this moment. So anyway, so it's so great to be here and part of this amazing conversation. And, you know, I come to this
this place, and I lead an organization called the Global Food Banking Network, and we are humanitarians at our core. So most of the conversations we're participating in are really looking to advocate for the 1 in 4 people globally that do not have enough food to eat. And I think, though, what the food banking model really looks to do is to take this incredible surplus we're seeing in food systems, so the third of all food that is produced that goes to waste, and how do we connect that, what is nutritious and edible, to people that are facing hunger in this moment. Thinking about long term, how do we make food systems more equitable, thank you, and sustainable? And so I think that as we're looking at this challenge of facing a climate crisis as well as a major humanitarian burden at this moment, I think that we're thinking about how do food recovery organizations, how can we form partnerships to allow us to recover more of that nutritious surplus product as part of the circular economy, and be able to scale that up in a way that is very meaningful to reduce methane emissions as well as make social gains. And I think that this is the moment to really be having that conversation, because we're just going to see additional humanitarian impacts as we get closer and closer to 2030, even more so by 2050.
Thank you, Lisa. And yes, you are totally right, because we need to consider, food banking in policy actions. When we are talking about methane mitigation, we need to include food banking, as an action. And now I'm going to go to Alison, and we are talking about Drive collaboration. So we're going to share the microphone because it's the better way to do this, And as Ambassador Stewart said, we have good news, we are going to expand Reciclo Orgánicos to 10 countries in Latin America. And here, Alison was leading the Reciclo Orgánicos project in Chile, and now you're leading the implementation of this project in these 10 countries. Could you tell us what were the biggest challenges that you faced during the implementation of the first phase of this project? What was it?
Thank you, Carolina. Yes, we're very excited to continue this partnership and be partnering with Canada as well in this program. So the Reciclo Orgánicos program. Sorry, can you hear me better now? Okay. The focus of the Reciclo Orgánicos program is accelerating project implementation to help countries reduce their emissions as quickly as possible. So we're taking a two-handed approach on this. So on the one hand, you have, policies, excuse me, I'm being attacked by a fly here. Two-handed approach. On the one hand, we have the policy side, creating enabling conditions for project implementation. And then on the other hand, you have your identifying and developing of your on-the-ground projects to really help significantly reduce methane emissions. Oh no. So from a strategic perspective, that two-handed approach really works well. But in practice, really what we see is the alignment of the high-level national policy action to ensure sustainable long-term impact and the acceleration of projects on the ground to obtain emission reductions in the short term does not always go as smoothly as we would hope. And this is mainly because there's still little awareness of the importance of tackling methane emissions from the waste sector among authorities at all levels. So in addition to this, we really see four main issues from our on-the-ground work. So first is the local level project information and really the lack thereof. Information on waste management is not easily available, and focal points lack the time and resources to respond with the information that we need in the timeframes really that we would like to have it. So we have found that close coordination, communication, and engagement as well as sharing early assessments and the economic and technical analysis really helps the process, helps them visualize the opportunities and the benefits that organic waste recycling can bring to their communities. So second is circular economy effects are not focused on organics. So at the national level, we are seeing a growing focus on valorizing waste, in developing countries on a circular economy, but they're currently focused on renewables and plastics, which is great. But organics make up more than 50% of waste streams in the developing country context. And so, there's a necessity to change the mindset that organics have value, and they're valuable. And of course, to help decision makers be more aware that mitigation potential that improved organic waste management can bring. Third, there's a lack of separation of source or at the source. Countries may have regulations in place, but have not achieved implementation in practice. This has a detrimental effect on potential projects, as organics are more valuable if they are not mixed in with other forms of waste. So for example, if you have plastics in with your organics, that's not going to be marketable. So really, strengthening source separation and separate collection are among the best practices that we really need to see advanced. Finally, prior negative experience with organic waste treatment technologies is an issue. So for example, past compost plants that did not have quality control, complaints from the neighbors of the smell, final products are not of sufficient quality, per the last issue, or you're not getting quite the market that you had hoped, and you're not covering your operational costs. These have a real reluctance to implement new organic waste treatment facilities. Thank you.
Thanks. This is collaboration. Thanks, Alison. And I think that is exactly what we were talking about when we listened, and heard Rodolfo. We need circular economy policies that are focused on organic waste. We need that, as developing countries. And now, you tell us about the talent that you face. And I want to talk with Carolina Leitao, the president of the Chilean Association of Municipalities, on how is the Chilean Association of Municipalities supporting and promoting the waste diversion and segregation. The mayor is going to speak in Spanish, and we are going to have translation, so that's perfect. Y, alcaldesa, si podemos tener la mitad de la respuesta en español y después la segunda mitad y traducen el párrafo completo. Mejor.
Muchas gracias por la invitación y a mis compañeras panelistas. Thank you for all. Las acciones que desarrollamos como Asociación Chilena de Municipalidades para apoyar a los municipios en temas de residuos son diversas. ¿Así? ¿O más? Ya. La primera son varias acciones. La primera es capacitación y formación. Nosotros somos una asociación de municipios, por lo tanto lo que tenemos que hacer es desarrollar acciones para capacitar y formar tanto a alcaldes como a los equipos municipales en tema de gestión de residuos.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'd like to thank all the panel members for also accompanying us here. Well, the actions that we perform as a Chilean Association of Municipalities to support the municipalities in terms of waste are diverse. Furthermore, I would like to say that the first one are various actions. The first one is training and education. We are an association of municipalities, so therefore we need to perform actions to train and educate as much as the mayors, as the municipal teams that are in charge of waste administration.
Otra de las acciones que desarrollamos es instalar capacidad técnica para que los municipios puedan desarrollar proyectos de inversión para gestionar los residuos en las municipalidades. En Chile, la diferencia de capacidades entre un municipio y otro es muy grande. Hay municipios muy pequeños con poca capacidad técnica y municipios grandes con mayores recursos y mayor capacidad. Y hay recursos disponibles para poder optar a desarrollar proyectos, pero muchas veces hay municipios que no optan a esos proyectos porque no tienen la capacidad profesional y técnica para poder postular a un proyecto, ya sea nacional o internacional.
Furthermore, we need to take actions, and these actions that we take are installing technical capacity so that the municipalities can perform and conduct investment projects to be able to manage waste at the municipal level. Now in Chile, the difference in capacities between one municipality and another is huge. There's very small municipalities with very little technical capacity and larger municipalities with more resources and capacity, and there's resources available to develop projects. However, the municipalities that don't choose those projects, it's because they don't have the technical capacity to apply to a project, be it a national or an international level project. Okay.
Y las otras dos acciones son generar una recolección de información respecto de la situación que existe como asociación, nos permite tener una mirada global. Nuestra asociación reúne 320 de 345 municipios que tiene Chile, por lo tanto nuestra capacidad de obtener información es muy grande. Entonces recolectamos información de los municipios sobre las distintas iniciativas, tenemos por ejemplo tanto estatales como de otro tipo de organizaciones como Chile Sin Basura u otras. Recolectamos esa información para poder generar y planificar acciones conjuntas o más concretas o para postular a proyectos estatales, etcétera.
So the other two actions are to generate a collection of information with respect to the situation that exists. And as an association, this allows us to have a global outlook. Our association covers 320 of 345 municipalities in Chile, so our capacity of obtaining information is huge. So we collect information from the municipalities about the various initiatives we have, be it at the state level or of other types of organizations like Chile Sin Basura or others, and we collect that information to be able to generate and plan actions together, concrete actions, or to apply to state projects. Okay.
Y por último, también organizamos desde la asociación giras y visitas técnicas, tanto internas en nuestro país, para conocer otras experiencias y ver cuáles de ellas pueden ser replicadas en otros municipios, incluso facilitando el mismo proyecto, adaptándolo a la realidad local, pero donde podemos copiar incluso proyectos técnicos que son replicables y también giras internacionales donde hay otras experiencias que nos permitan ahorrar tiempo en pensar cosas que alguien ya pensó. Siempre en Chile decimos, ¿para qué inventar la rueda si alguien ya la inventó?
So, also, what we do is we organize technical visits, be it internal in our country, to get to know other experiences, and we can organize replications in other municipalities, even facilitating the project itself, adapting it to the local reality, where we can even copy projects on the technical level that are replicable, and also international visits where we see other experiences that allow us to save time in thinking about things that somebody already thought of. In Chile, we always say, why should we reinvent the wheel if somebody already invented it? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, because I think that's great, you know. We always talk about what we need to do, but now we're hearing about reality, you know, and it's exactly what you say, Alison, you know. We need capacity building, we need data collection, and we need technical collaboration. So then there is how we could understand how we need to implement things. And Christy, we are talking about methane mitigation actions related to communities in territories. Can you tell us about the relevance of environmental justice consideration in the design of these actions?
Yeah, I want to start with just saying that it's quite a pleasure to be on this panel with all of you, and I think that my points will relate in some ways to the challenges that you spoke about, Alison. Because waste is everywhere and it's generated by everyone, and it's managed primarily by cities, the solutions require that people take action. And one of the things that we hear the most is that is concerns from local governments that people won't separate or decrease their waste, and that reduction, composting, and anaerobic digestion programs then aren't going to work. So what we've seen as Gaia is that when you involve community organizers and recyclers in designing the systems of the future, and particularly those who are most impacted by waste pollution, and you put them at the center of the discussions around what the solutions can be, then you get very successful at making the transition to circular systems. And those systems are better for communities, they're better for public health, they're better for local economies, and you know, perhaps most important, they're better for the climate. So for us, it's really important to center the knowledge and the voices of those who are most impacted. That's not only good policy and good governance, it also corrects historical patterns of environmental injustice. And I say this because waste disposal policies that facilities that pollute are most often cited in marginalized communities. And in the United States, where I'm from, you know, data has shown that race is actually the most significant factor in determining whether you're going to live next to an incinerator or hazardous waste facility. In other countries, it may be concentration of impacts on indigenous communities, on people who live in poverty, people who are excluded for religious, caste, or other forms of discrimination. So the good news is that the best solutions to methane are in fact also the solutions that are going to help create the conditions for justice. And this includes compost, which restores soil and can benefit community gardens and local farmers, waste picker inclusion, and waste pickers can really help to set up very effective systems that truly work. They know what is in the waste stream, and they can help redesign systems that will also create increased incomes for them. Food redistribution programs like the ones you're talking about, anaerobic digestion, which can provide decentralized energy sources, biocover and landfill remediation, which helps people living near landfills. So for us, the involvement of impacted communities and workers is going to also ensure that we don't put money into large polluting incinerators or very expensive landfill gas systems that have like never-ending gas capture schemes. And you know, I want to say a word here. You know, those systems can really lock us into substituting methane for CO2. And that is really a problem because it will turn our sector's short-term climate problem into a long-term problem. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Christy, because I think that is exactly the type of conversations that we need to have. You know, we need to discuss this, and we need to put waste solution in the center, but considering all the realities and all the different, you know, visions that we have, because we have information and we know that, for example, incineration is not a good solution, you know, because yes, maybe we're not generating methane directly, but we're generating CO2, and that is a problem, you know. We don't want CO2 also, you know. We are talking about carbon neutrality and methane mitigation. We need to face both together. So I will come back to Lisa, you know, because we want to talk on how we could encourage national and local governments to consider food banking and food donation as a concrete action to be included in their methane mitigation pathway. We know there are a lot of countries that are working on methane mitigation action plans. How we could encourage them, you know, and how could we help them? And I think we have good news also.
Yes, thank you. And I just think you're exactly on point with those comments. So food banks, I think when people talk about food banks, you often think about your local soup kitchen if you happen to be from a high-income country, or if you're from a place in Latin America where food banking is quite prevalent, you're thinking about maybe a food pantry or the like. But if you were to aggregate all of these local food recovery organizations at scale, which is what we do kind of at the Global Food Banking Network, you would see that food banking is being carried out in more than 70 countries worldwide, that these local organizations are recovering in totality more than 3 billion kilos of food annually, and that together, food banks, if you're looking, you know, from a global picture, are serving upwards of 90 million people facing food access issues. And so what you have is a grassroots movement, and I think we as a community, it's our responsibility to get much better at telling this story. So I think one of the first things that we need to do from this angle is not just be thinking about how much food is moving through the system, but what does this mean from an environmental standpoint? What does this mean from a methane mitigation standpoint? And to do that, we need a methodology of how to calculate that and to do it in a very credible way. And that really gives us the opportunity to be talking in the national policy discussions about if you really want to decrease your methane in terms of the NDCs, this is what the opportunity to do that, what's happening now through the food banking system, here's what the opportunity could be with very specific, you know, capacity building support. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing, I think, and this is something that was previously discussed related to policy interventions, and the specific examples given were the legislation that was unveiled in France in 2015, and then there was a municipal example from Milan. It's actually supported nationally by the Italians. But there is a lot of common sense, no-cost policies that you can do to be encouraging people to donate food and producers to donate food as opposed to throwing it away. First would be liability protection. The Good Samaritan Act was what it's called, I guess, in the global conversations. This is really only a reality in about 10 countries worldwide, and this ensures liability protection if a producer donates food in good faith, that they essentially don't have that liability. And that's a major concern that we see from our members in the Global South, that they are not able to partner with companies, even producers, in the same way they would like to because of those concerns around liability. The second would be removing tax disincentives. There's many places in the world today where if you want to donate food, you have to pay VAT on it. The producer has to pay VAT. And that is just absolutely a disincentive. It's, in that case, it's cheaper to send it to landfill than it is to donate it to people that, to people that need it. And if you aren't, once you remove the disincentives, you can start thinking about incentives. Incentives, of course, in terms of philanthropic donations, but also in terms of product donated to charitable organizations. And the Colombian government has an absolute best-in-class example of how this works. Not only are food producers that donate product to charities given a tax benefit, but they actually are given an increased tax benefit than if they were to do it towards other types of way of diverting waste from landfill. Not that those ways aren't important, but if we want to incentivize behavior along kind of the food loss and waste hierarchy, we have to think about ways to how can we use this to address hunger, which is a major humanitarian concern. So there's all sorts of other types of policy actions that can be considered around date coding and certainly around specific small-scale government investments as it relates to pilots. But I think the start of this is from our perspective, having a very sound methodology in place where we can calculate the impact, and that allows policymakers, investors to really get their minds around what is possible if they were to be considering food banking as an option or food recovery as opposed to landfill.
Well, yes. exactly, you know, and we are going to work together, you know, on that methodology. That is the great news, you know. And you said a lot about concrete examples, you know, like Colombia and other ones that they are doing, and in Chile also, you know, we're doing food banking, and we need to bring that experience, you know, to this discussion. That is exactly what we need. And I want to came back to Carolina Leitao. Could you tell us an example of a successful organic waste model that is implemented already in Chile? You know, we're talking about concrete things here. We're not talking about just only policies and things like that, because we need implementation. This is the COP of implementation.
Sí, la experiencia chilena es diversa en esta materia, pero tenemos buenas iniciativas que mostrar y que van en la línea de ir aumentando la capacidad de reciclar, o sea, de tratar los residuos orgánicos. Hay varios municipios que han desarrollado iniciativas exitosas y municipios de diversos ingresos. Quiere decir, esto demuestra de que es posible desarrollar acciones independientes de los ingresos, del monto per cápita que tiene de ingresos por habitante cada municipio. Tenemos la primera experiencia de la comuna de La Pintana, una comuna popular, de muy bajos ingresos, pero que ha logrado llegar al 20% de los residuos orgánicos para poder reciclarlos a través de la recolección domiciliaria y donde además esto se lleva a una planta de residuos para tratamiento de residuos orgánicos a través de vermicomposteras y de composteras. Por lo tanto, esa es el municipio que partió además hace muchos años, el año 2005, partió con esta iniciativa.
Okay, to talk about the increase of recycling and also of treating the waste in the sense, I'll give the following example. There's many municipalities that have developed initiatives that have been successful, municipalities of diverse levels of income. This shows that it's possible to develop actions independent of the level of resources and the amount per capita that each municipality may have. Furthermore, we have the first experience of La Pintana municipality. It's a very high population municipality with low income that has reached 20% of organic waste in having it recycled in home garbage or waste collection. And this is then taken to a waste plant for treatment of organic waste to be later made into compost. So that would be the municipality that also started many years ago in the year 2005. They started with this initiative.
Hay también otras iniciativas, la comuna de Providencia, que está en el centro de Santiago, que ha desarrollado entrega de composteras y vermicomposteras domiciliarias y ha entregado más de 5.000, es un municipio que tiene 120.000 habitantes más o menos, y ha entregado más de 5.000 composteras a sus habitantes para poder desarrollar el reciclaje orgánico. Y un municipio del sur de Chile, que es el municipio de Santa Juana, muy referente porque desarrolló, donde había un antiguo vertedero, una recolección de artículos no solo, o sea, de material reciclable, material orgánico, y ha logrado, en el fondo, desarrollar un municipio pequeño y por lo tanto ha logrado una gran capacidad de recolección para poder hacer este sistema.
So there are also other initiatives like in the municipality of Providencia, which is the center of Santiago, which has developed compost pens and home compost pens. It's delivered more than 5,000 and it has inhabitants of 120,000. So it's delivered more than 5,000 compost pens for municipal home composting. And in the south of Chile, Santa Juana municipality developed where there used to be an old dump site. It created a recollection of recyclable material, organic material, and what it has been able to do is to develop this in a small municipality, and it created a large collection capacity to use this type of system.
Y también, bueno, me acompaña acá el alcalde de Independencia de Chile también, una de la zona céntrica de Santiago, donde se están desarrollando iniciativas más bien de educación ambiental, donde en un centro que tienen de formación ambiental se está trabajando ya con algunas unidades vecinales para ir desarrollando este tipo de iniciativas, o sea, de una manera más bien como piloto, de alguna manera inicial, pero donde ya se está trabajando en el fondo para ir probando el sistema, porque en cada municipio hay que ir probando las iniciativas para ver cómo funcionan. El municipio de Independencia es muy céntrico, está muy dentro de la ciudad y por lo tanto son distintos a cuando tenemos municipios que están en las zonas más rurales o en lugares donde tienen mayor espacio. Entonces, una muy buena iniciativa que se está desarrollando en la zona urbana.
Another example is Independencia. We have the mayor of Independencia here. It's one of the central municipalities of Santiago, where they're performing initiatives that are more related to environmental education, where they have educational formation in environmental matters together with neighborhood groups to develop more initiatives. So it's a pilot program. It's incipient, but there's already working on trying out the system because each municipality has to try out the initiatives to see how they work. The municipality of Independencia is very central. It's within the city, so it's different when we talk about municipalities in the external areas, rural areas, where they have more space. So it's a very good initiative that's being conducted in the urban zones.
Y por último, obviamente, mi municipio, el de Peñalolén, que también está en la zona metropolitana, pero más cercano a la cordillera. Y yo he contado distintas iniciativas acá, y lo que se hace son iniciativas, unas que son recolección domiciliaria, por un lado, y otras iniciativas que tienen que ver con entrega de composteras u otros para poder hacerlo en el hogar. Yo creo que debemos avanzar en, ojalá, no transportar, porque el transporte también tiene emisiones, por lo tanto, lo lógico sería que ojalá la mayor cantidad de residuos se pudiesen tratar en el propio domicilio. Entonces, para eso Peñalolén tenemos dos grandes iniciativas. En Peñalolén tenemos ferias o mercados de verduras y frutas, entonces estamos trabajando el reciclaje de material orgánico de algunas de esas ferias. No podemos hacerlo con todas, pero estamos justamente desarrollando un proyecto para reciclar todo el material orgánico de nuestras ferias. Y por otro lado, tenemos el trabajo con los domicilios para que los habitantes puedan en sus propios domicilios generar este tratamiento de residuos orgánicos a través de, hemos entregado vermicompostera o hacemos composteras, vermicomposteras también a los jardines infantiles, hemos entregado a través de un proyecto que nos ganamos. Y por último, capacitación medioambiental para todos los vecinos a través de Instagram o físicamente en nuestro centro de educación ambiental para que las personas puedan reciclar sus residuos orgánicos en su casa. Peñalolén es una comuna que tiene muchas casas más que edificios, entonces es más fácil lograr tener un espacio para poder desarrollar este tipo de iniciativas.
Also, another example would be my municipality, Peñalolén in this case, which is also within the metropolitan region of Santiago, but closer to the mountain range in this case. So I've talked about various initiatives here, and what we do are initiatives that are, one, home collection, and other initiatives that have to do with the delivery of compost or others, so that this can be done at people's homes. Now, I believe that we should advance more in the latter, hopefully, because we avoid transport. Transport in itself emits emissions. It would be logical that the most amount of waste could be treated in people's own homes. For that end, Peñalolén has created two main initiatives. In Peñalolén, we have farmers markets where they sell fruits and vegetables. So we're also working together with the recycling of organic matter from some of these farmers markets. We cannot do it with every one, but we're developing a project to recycle all the organic matter from our farmers markets. And also we work in homes and with homes so that the citizens at their own homes can perform organic waste treatment. We've delivered vermicompost, or we also create vermicompost and composts delivered to daycare centers. This is a project that we applied to and were awarded. And finally, trainings. Training on the environmental issues for all neighborhoods and neighbors through Instagram, social media, and our centers, so that people can recycle their organic waste at home. Peñalolén has many homes, more than buildings, it has many houses. So this can help, and they can have space to develop and conduct this type of initiative.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that's great examples on different income level municipalities, that could implement different actions considering their reality. And I'm going to change the order. I'm going to go first to Alison, because after listening to this experience, what do you recommend for policymakers and local governments to promote the design and the implementation of waste diversion project, considering this, because we know that we have different realities. What are your recommendations?
Sure. Thank you, Carolina. So working in Latin America, we're working with 6 different countries, and we have found that there are sorry, I never do it enough. So we're working in Latin America across 6 different countries of different capacities, different country contexts, sizes, and even with that, I think there's sort of 3 recommendations that I think regardless of the country context are going to be relevant and useful. So first is, and this is vital, create and socialize a common vision and targets for the sector and develop a strategy to meet them. Without the strategy, no matter what your vision is, you're never going to get there. So, for example, a national organic waste strategy can be incredibly helpful in terms of aligning actors, banks, sending signals to the private sector, reducing uncertainty and risk perception. Second, provide greater resources and capacity support for municipalities. I think as we've heard already, it's the municipalities who are primarily responsible for waste management across the developing world. And it's a thing to have, and it's a good thing. You can have your laws, you can have your goals on the books, but if the municipalities are not supported to implement them, you're never going to achieve your goals. And the ambition will remain in writing only. And then of course your targets are never going to be met. So this is why we're focused on capacity support for municipalities to accelerate projects, for technical assistance, and we offer everything from pre-feasibility studies to business models and all the way up to engineering reports to give the municipalities the tools that they need. So finally, the third is to help develop a market for byproducts of organic waste treatment. So this is compost, anaerobic digestion, by creating certifications for compost and digestate to guarantee minimum product quality and build trust that the products are going to be used productively in the economy. So in addition, engage and find ways to support and incorporate technology and service providers, banks, and other key stakeholders into the ecosystem is going to be strategic to achieve emission reductions in the short term as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. And yes, that are great recommendations. And I want to talk about another recommendation, considering environmental justice, how we could encourage national and local governments to consider environmental justice in their update NDCs, for example, or in their national organic waste strategies. How we could help them and support them to include environmental justice not only as a declaration, considering concrete actions and concrete, I don't know, KPIs, for example. How could you do that?
Okay, so I think we're saying a lot of the same things, which is that governments need information and support and data on how real solutions work alongside data on the scale of the problem. So we work with people who are creating models around the world, folks who come from environmental justice organizing and are now developing evidence that shows that solutions that aim at zero waste are much better and can reduce methane in the sector by over 80%. We recently published a report that we have some copies of here that I can show folks. But I want to give an example from Nipe Fagio in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and Anna, who's with Nipe Fagio, is over there. And they've shown that their implementation models, which provide full-scale services to neighborhoods in Dar, have achieved 75% reduction in waste sent to dump sites, 93% compliance in segregation at source, costs that are less than 15% of the annual projected budgets, tens of thousands of people engaged, and 33 times more jobs than in other neighborhoods of the city. And there's similar data from organizers in the Philippines and Indonesia and many other countries where we have members that are part of the Gaia network. And the other thing that I'd like to share from a panel that we had yesterday is that in Africa, approximately 10 million people work in waste picking. So I just want to say that there's a lot of possibility in working with these folks to design and also to gather information about what the right solutions are. And I think that's one thing that governments need as they're thinking about what commitments to make in their NDCs. And then in addition to that, governments need startup financial support to get to, and that needs to go to some of these pledged countries so they can develop more robust NDCs. And then I know that we're short on time, so I'm shortening what I was going to say. One last thing I'd like to say is that in addition to more robust NDCs, we think that it's also important to create mechanisms for cities to make commitments and cities who are working on more just solutions. So our leaders in Asia are developing a methane pledge for their Zero Waste Cities network. They're asking local officials to commit to plans to reduce methane by 70% by 2030, methane from waste, and they're inviting others to join in those efforts. So I think that, you know, thinking about environmental justice in NDCs is about thinking about where are those examples that people can see, learn from, and then commit to implementing in their own places.
Wow, thank you, you know, because I think we done it all, you know, like we did this like in a circular economy way, you know, we talk about generation, we talk about policies, we talk about concrete actions, and also about recommendations. We thank you very much to be with us today, and I want to tell you that today we're going to have great news, you know, we're going to have the Global Methane Pledge Ministerial, and there we're going to hear a lot of things related with this, you know, on what we are talking about. And what I really hope is that the next year or the next one, we have a waste day at COP, you know, because today we are in a solution day and we need a waste day. We need to bring more people to this discussion to talk about this. And that is what we are working on also. So thank you very much to this great panel and to you also to be with us today.